Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Indie Pride. Welcome back. Grab a seat, grab a coffee, grab a snack, and let's talk about Total War Multiplayer. I think most of us can agree that multiplayer is getting more love in the Warhammer trilogy than it did in Rome 2 or Attila, the games that directly preceded it. Just the addition of free-for-all in Game 2 is a good indication of that, but it's still treated, to this day, like CA's red-headed stepchild, despite its importance in maintaining a healthy player base overall, and the massive potential it has to bring in new players who would in turn buy Creative Assembly's products and presumably help out their bottom line. Very complex business processes going on there, I know. Stay with me. Obviously, multiplayer is a big part of this channel, and others like Heir of Carthage, Oakley, and Pixelated Apollo, who dedicate all or most of their YouTube time to multiplayer battles. I'm always going to be an advocate for an in-depth multiplayer experience. Campaign may be the bread and butter of Total War, but it doesn't have to be the whole bakery. Like I said, there's a ton of room for improvement, better balancing, and additional features, and fostering that could create countless new customers. One of my biggest frustrations is the patching process. It's a shame, but it is slow. Glacier slow. Slow as molasses in January slow. CA has to deal with all that red tape and quality control, and patches very rarely come except alongside big DLC, which I'm really not a big fan of. There's a lot of things to not like about the whole patching process in general for Total War Warhammer and the games that preceded it. I get not doing stuff like bi-weekly patches, this isn't Dota 2, but after the Bretonnia patch, what was it, like 6 months before the next patch? That's pretty crazy, that's a long time to wait. So while Total War Warhammer Multiplayer is arguably in its best state ever, and Magic is arguably in its best state ever, they still have issues, plenty of them. And this mod that we're about to talk about aims to fix them, or at least some of them. Enter the Multiplayer Rebalance Overhaul. Not the catchiest name ever, but it gets the point across. It aims to keep the design philosophy CA had when creating units and battles in general, so it's not a massive overhaul like SFO that changes battle speed and the design of units themselves, but it has a ton of quality of life improvements and better balancing across the board that all add up to make a pretty sizable impact. And the mod was created and is curated by some of the best players in the community. Players like Onjage and Empty Thought to name a few, and a bunch of clan members who frequently play in the tournament scene. If you're wondering why I'm talking about this now, 3 weeks away from the release of Total War Warhammer 2, that's because the plan is to kick everything over to Game 2 and keep the balance party rolling, especially if Creative Assembly doesn't make the requested changes once they've been given an opportunity to do so. That's one of the main points of this mod, is to provide CA with a comprehensive list of changes and improvements that hopefully get added to the base game, but if not, there's still a mod that competitive and casual players can fall back on for their multiplayer gaming. Could it be the future of Total War Warhammer Multiplayer? Maybe. We've seen it happen before. Blade Balance made a big impact on Total War Rome 2's multiplayer metagame, and was a favorite of quite a few tournament players and YouTubers, including Heir of Carthage. So in this new Total War climate, where new media is a really important aspect of the Total War scene in general, a mod like this could absolutely play a sizable role in the shaping of the future multiplayer scene, especially if it gets some exposure. And that's where I come in. So let's cover some of the major and minor changes in Multiplayer Rebalance Overhaul, and talk about why they're so important. Obviously not going to cover every single change here. The entire balance notes and changes will be in the description of the video, and in the pinned comment if you want to follow along. So first things first, costs have been standardized across the board. Abilities and spells now have consistent cost tied to their rarity, and mounts have standardized price points. For both items, like Archaon's Crown of Domination, and Magic, spells like Flaming Sword of Ruin or Common of Cassandora, there are 3 classifications now: Common, Uncommon, and Rare and Unique. For items, the progression goes 75 gold for Common, 150 gold for Uncommon, 200 gold for Rare and Unique. It doesn't matter what item it is. If it's Uncommon, it's going to be 150 gold. If it's Rare and Unique, it's going to be 200 gold. So same tier system for Magic as well, but it goes 75, 100, 125. Vanilla balancing is a bit bizarre because a lot of the spells and items have very arbitrary point values. You can go into Vanilla right now and see that there's really not, it doesn't seem like there's a very defining theme or characteristic that goes into the pricing of some of these spells. Some absolutely garbage tier spells cost an obscene amount of money, while some fantastic spells cost almost nothing to bring. And this kind of led to a meta where, even with Lord characters, a player might only invest money into bringing 1 or 2 spells. And it's just not that cool seeing supposedly top tier casters only bring a handful of spells. The other problem with that was that the base cost of a lot of lords, particularly caster lords, was simply too high. So a lot of these characters that just don't see much play in the multiplayer scene have gotten price reductions to make them more appealing and allow you to pick up a few more spells and still be considered cost effective. Now, speaking of spells, the majority of them have been rebalanced to make them more useful, or in the case of the overperforming spells like Final Transmutation and Dwellers Below, they're strong, but a bit more reasonable. So those two in particular have received slight nerfs to their damage output, but they're still very much worth bringing. For example, I believe Dwellers Below was like 40 DPS per entity, and now it's 35, so still strong, just not quite as good. You get to see some of those changes in action in the coming days as I get multiplayer replays with the mod, but from what I've played and tested so far, I do like a lot of the changes. Apparently there's been some disagreement on their end about projectile spells and vortex spells, so the basic functionality of those haven't been touched quite yet, but there's a lot of discussion about changing the calibration values of vortex spells, so they're more likely to stay on target without veering off into the sunset. Probably one of the biggest changes is the rebalancing of Winds of Magic across the board. A lot of those crazy expensive spells like Comet of Casandora, which felt more like a fart in the wind than a top tier damage spell from the Lore of Heavens, have had price reductions and changes to their mechanics. So for example, they've halved the total time of Comet so it impacts much sooner, from 12 seconds down to 6. I think I said price reduction there. What I meant to say was Winds of Magic cost reduction. So I think for Comet, for example, it's gone from 17 Winds of Magic to 9, so a lot more palatable to use it. None of Talk, of course, is a very hot topic, and now it doesn't target units, but it's a ground target, so more of a skill shot because of that casting delay, and it doesn't update enemies, so if more units run into the AoE after the initial spell goes down, they won't get caught up in it as well. It was always really silly to have like one model or the side of a unit clip the spell after it was already down, and have the entire unit end up getting netted. So with this change, net is still very good, but definitely less overpowered than it was. One of my favorite changes is the reduction across the board for fatigue reload penalties. That is an amazing change. So one thing I hate about vanilla multiplayer is this mechanic where units who shoot get tired just as quickly, sometimes more quickly, than units sprinting around the battlefield. It's a really bad mechanic because it unfairly punishes supposedly heavy-hitting monsters like the War Mammoth and a Ragnarok Spider who fatigue and become exhausted at double or triple the rate of other units because for some reason, Marauders and Goblins shooting and throwing weapons up top literally tires out the monster they're riding. As we know, Exhaustion is a huge factor because it dramatically lowers your stats and movement speed, and it can be the difference between winning and losing a game. And let's not forget about Wood Elves, who rely on skirmishing and kiting but get tired after a few volleys, slowing them down, reducing the effectiveness of skirmish builds in general, and basically just funneling players into more one-dimensional play. Not a good thing for the game. Glade Ladies, for instance, get exhausted before, I think like, well before even using half their ammunition in vanilla, and it's just not a good design. So I'm very glad to see that get changed. Now you'll get fatigued much slower just when shooting, and that will definitely benefit skirmish play and a lot of units in general. Factions like the Dwarfs, Chaos, and Beastmen have received some price reductions to make fielding an army a bit easier. Chosen are less expensive by 50 gold. Chosen with Halberds got a significant increase in their base attack time, so they'll be quite a bit more dangerous. When I say increase, I meant to say they're attacking faster now. So I guess you could technically say that's a decrease in the base attack time. So they'll be a lot more dangerous in melee, and certainly you won't be bringing Chosen cores or anything now, but you'll have more cash left over with Dwarfs and Chaos to consider bringing one or two more higher tier units, or just round out your build a bit better. Dwarfs got a big mass increase as well, so as long as dwarf units with charge defense versus large are standing still and facing the enemy charge, they will be very difficult for anything smaller than a troll to push through, and that should really help them protect their vital missile units and not be completely at the mercy of other stuff that their stubby little legs can't seem to catch. Wood Elves are roughly 15 to 20% more accurate than other archers now, with a better calibration value, which is essentially the area of effect where ammunition can go. So cannons, archers, and all these other units have a calibration value. They now are more accurate by about 15 to 20% compared to the archers of other factions, so they'll miss less shots and deal more damage when compared to the skirmishers of other factions, which is exactly what we want to see from them, right? They're the Wood Elves, they're supposed to be able to outshoot the Empire and the Dwarfs and a lot of other factions. Well, they might not outshoot the Dwarfs still because of Quarrelors and the fact that they have that shield block chance and the high armor, but that's a different story. So, in addition to that, they each have between 2 and 4 more ammunition than they have in vanilla, so that can equal or equate to quite a big increase in DPS as well. Thankfully, most items and abilities now will not start on obscenely long cooldowns. Abilities like King Lu and Sword of Corone, which in vanilla starts the game on like a 2-minute long cooldown. Arrow of Kurnus, another example. It just leads to a really stupid delay at the start of matches where people wait for their good abilities to come online, and that wasn't a good design either. So that's been changed so people don't feel the need to sit around for 2 minutes and wait for their abilities to come online before they actually engage. There have been a ton of price changes and stat changes across the board, way too many count, but underused or unused units pretty much got price decreases all the way around, and they got the occasional buff as well. Then there are a ton of little things, like Steam Tanks being immune to Vigor now, but they can't be healed. Throg gets like 33% more regeneration when compared to regular trolls. The Mortis engine only deals damage in an AoE when it's engaged in melee, so it's much less abusable now. Can't really abuse the Claw of the Gash like you could do in vanilla. And another change I really like is Arcane Conduit got added to characters that didn't previously have it. Thank God. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever that Chaos Sorcerer Lords, Archaon, I think Strigoi Ghoul Kings, and maybe a couple others didn't have it, but their hero versions or lower tier characters from other factions did. If you're a Lord level caster, you should have Arcane Conduit. It's kind of the point of you being a caster in general, and in vanilla, a lot of them don't have it, so seeing that get added is real nice. And some of the things that I'm most excited for but haven't been implemented yet, and I'm definitely going to try and push CA to adopt these features when I get a chance to talk to them, are providing an option to remove the balance bar and the timer in replays, and randomizing the color of players in the replay itself. Because replays are usually going to be sent in by the person who won the battle, and that can give away the outcome of the battle before the replay even begins. And another thing here, being able to see the wins and magic pool for each player in replays would be really nice quality of life change. And maybe the biggest change ever, removing unit acknowledgments when orders are issued in replays. Literally one of my biggest pet peeves in this game. Like the Orc War Boss and Isabella von Karstein are two famous examples. They're absolute worst in this game. They're so obnoxious. I literally don't bring them anymore in replays because they're so annoying. With the Orc War Boss, you got the go, 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 running, go, go, go. And then with Isabella von Karstein, you've got quickly, swiftly. And she's got that silly voice that she just says quickly, swiftly like 6 times in a row. Doesn't matter how many times you click it. Those are the 2 lines she has. Super obnoxious. And then it just like completely drowns out everything else when you're trying to commentate. So a lot of you guys probably haven't run into that because I know a lot of you probably don't even go in to watch replays on your own client, but believe me, the commentators, the YouTube people, we notice that stuff, and it's bad for Isabella and the Orc War Boss especially. So yeah, overall, perhaps not as exciting or flashy as something like Steel Faith, this mod here, but it isn't trying to be. It's trying to mold the vanilla multiplayer experience into a much more polished, well-balanced game, and I think you'll agree, after looking at the balance changes in this mod and the full document, there are a lot of really good changes here. A lot of quality of life stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think too much about, but would, I think, really help improve the multiplayer experience in general. As I would expect, again, it's made by a bunch of people who have hundreds or thousands of hours of experience in Total War Warhammer Multiplayer, so I very much expected to see them make a lot of these good quality of life changes. And again, if CA doesn't decide to implement any of this whatsoever, we have the mod itself to fall back on. And we've seen Blade Balance and other mods in the past make a big impact on the multiplayer scene, so there's nothing to stop us from doing the same thing here. So take a look at the documents, give me and the mod team your impressions of what you've seen and heard of multiplayer Rebalance Overhaul, and try it out for yourself. Go grab a friend, play some games, and leave some feedback in the comment section below. Again, it remains to be seen what impact this mod will have on the multiplayer community going forward, but I certainly do like the direction it's headed. Has a lot of potential for sure. And thank you all for watching. Indie Pride, signing out for now.